All right, technical session number 31, hardware and network troubleshooting. Throughout this technical session, we are going to be able to identify common hardware and network issues that users experience and describe common ways to solve those issues. All right. Out of the gate, let's get somebody reading here. Evan, can you read us the first paragraph, please?
Computers are complicated and troubleshooting can be hard. You already know that, but give yourself some latitude in troubleshooting because it's not always easy. Prepare yourself with a solid foundation of knowledge and never be afraid to consult other resources such as the internet or coworkers. Situations will arise that make even the most experienced technicians shake their heads in frustration.
Very good, thank you. And, you know, one of the things you'll hear as soon, especially when you're kind of new into the field and stuff like that, is it just takes time. It just takes practice. It just takes experience. You know, don't worry, you'll get there. And to a point, that is true. That is very true. But if you have a firm troubleshooting methodology in place, like the 7 steps or 6 steps that we have for troubleshooting, and you employ that every single time and you take a methodical approach to it, you will be able to resolve a lot of issues just through that. So that will give you a leg up, because understanding, you know, what computer problems are and you know, the theory behind a lot of that stuff, that's all well and good. But being an effective troubleshooter is, you know, one of those things that's really going to set you apart from your peers in the industry. So some categories that we are going to be focusing on for the duration of this technical session. It's going to be storage, video systems like projectors or displays, printers, and then wired and wireless networks. Obviously, there is the ever-present ID10T error, but always remember, take care when fixing those. Right. Hard drives. Basically, 3 causes for hard drive issues. Either the adapter itself, the interface, the SATA, the PATA, you know, however it's hooked up, either that is bad or not seated properly. The drive itself is bad or failing. And the adapter itself is not necessarily hooked up properly. Now, first and last causes, the drive won't work at all, so that's pretty easy to identify. You try unhooking it, rehooking it, see if that works. If that doesn't necessarily work, maybe try swapping out the cable with another cable and see if the cable itself is the issue. Many people tend to forget this, that the cable itself can be the problem. If they get bent too much, it gets crushed or pinched or something along those lines, it can fray or break the internal wires in that cable and it will no longer function properly. So always a good idea to try just swapping out cables real quick and see if that solves the issue. And in the process of you're doing that, you're also checking to make sure that it's seated properly, not just partially in there. Remember, we talked about chip creep. When these things heat and cool repeatedly, you know, and over long periods of time, they can shift their positions and they may not have a solid contact after a while. Also, computers get bumped. They get bumped by vacuum cleaners. They get moved from desk to desk. Each time you move these things, they get jostled. When you jostle them, sometimes things get knocked loose. So we need to go in and verify it. Now, if it is a bad or failing drive, symptoms aren't always as obvious. So one of these might sound familiar. We were talking about this. You have the loud clicking or scratching. Obviously, this is something you will only hear coming from mechanical drives. Usually caused by a physical malfunction within the drive. If this is the case, you need to back up your data as quickly as possible and replace the drive itself. Now, slow performance or read and write failures. You know, the thing is this can also be an issue with the drive having way too much stuff on it. Like when you get close to the full mark, the drive isn't going to be as efficient. One of the solutions you can attempt first before replacing the drive would be to get rid of some of your old files and applications, free up space. Generally, you want to have about 25% free drive space, allows for movement of files. If it's a mechanical drive, that allows for defragmenting. Also, you have page files that are adjusting in size based on need and things like that. So you need to have roughly about a quarter drive space free in order for it to function very efficiently. So getting rid of old or unwanted files is a really good way to kind of clean things up. I know, like, the longer we have a phone, the harder it is to do that. We have apps downloaded from 3 or 4 years ago, you know, like, you know what, I haven't used this app in 2.5 years, but darn it, I paid 99 cents for that sucker and I'm not giving it up. You know, so, you know, when's the last time you played Candy Crush? No, it was, 2015, but, it's a great game. And eventually when I have time, I'm going to get back to it. I still got, I'm real close to that high score, but you haven't played it in a couple years. It's time to let go. All right. Other thing would be boot problems. And this can be, it could be a multitude of things, but, it could be a failure to boot completely, the hard drive not being recognized by the BIOS. Now, if this is something where it originally was recognized by the BIOS, but now it's not, go in, just verify, that if the BIOS can see it or not. But if it's a new hard drive, it may require a firmware update or something along those lines so that the drive can actually recognize that it's there. All right. Be sure to do your due diligence. Check your connections. Always check your connections. It's going to be one of your first things you do. If somebody's complaining about no internet and you are physically going to their computer to check, reach around behind that computer and just firmly check that RJ45, make sure it is clicked in place, because sometimes they don't fully click it in and it's just kind of like sitting at a bit of an angle, so it doesn't get a full connection and they're not able to connect to the internet. So always, always, always double check your connections. Now, if it's the system boots fine but cannot find an operating system, lets you know there is probably a issue with the master boot record, or MBR, on the drive. Now, to fix this, you need a bootable media, either a USB, which is more common nowadays, or an optical drive on older systems, but more often than not, you will have the USB. You will boot into the WinRe or Windows Recovery environment to get to the command prompt. And I highly recommend you write down and remember this command line right here. So you go to the command line after the Windows Recovery environment, and you're going to type in bootrec/fix MBR. I had this as a performance-based question. For the life of me, I could not remember this command line. I sat there for 5 minutes typing in over 50 different commands trying to hit the right one. Couldn't do it, but at least I got partial credit because I got most of the stuff done. But this command line right here, you'll want to remember it. So bootrec/fix MBR. So fix master boot record. All right. Questions so far? Yeah, good point, Mark. Mites and insects are attracted to electrical wiring. Yet another reason why they say don't eat at your computer. And them crawling in and messing around with stuff can knock things loose. All right. Now, if it's a boot sector issue, boot rec /fix boot to fix the boot sector. So this is the in the Windows recovery environment. And you'll go into command line for this. All right. Next, we'll talk about smart software with regards to hard drives, which stands for self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology. Fancy way of saying it kind of keeps an eye on the hard drives, tries to give you a heads up as to when they're going to fail or if they're showing signs of potentially failing. Is this foolproof? Absolutely not. But on the off chance that it does catch it, it's good to have it. You typically will see it in enterprise systems on RAID arrays and things like that. More often than not, it is used by manufacturers to help locate any persistent issues that they're seeing with their hard drives. Like, if you're a fan of Seagate, and then all of a sudden it seems like every Seagate drive you buy lasts for about 3 to 5 months and then just crashes and you lose all your stuff. So with something like a smart system, this would help the manufacturers kind of try to figure out where this catastrophic failure is happening. Is it happening in-house? Is it being jostled around in transit? And then we have these issues, so they can actually have it tested at their facilities and then have it tested at their distributors. One of the warehouses I was in actually was doing testing at a distributor just to make sure that the issue was not happening in transit. It was happening at the manufacturing site, trying to narrow down where these problems were occurring. Now, so it hasn't been overly widely adopted, only in certain enterprise settings, like I said, in manufacturers. Now, part of this is attributed to Windows operating systems don't come with built-in graphical utility to parse out the data for the drives. The 70 metrics that Smart provides aren't always easily understood by the average layman. And unfortunately, it doesn't give you steps to take after that to mitigate those problems. And even among manufacturers, unfortunately, they themselves have not consistently defined what the metrics are for failure within the smart drive. So it, with Western Digital, it could be one set of standards. With Seagate, it could be a completely other set of standards and things like that. So it makes it hard to kind of cross-reference across different types. Everybody's favorite, RAID arrays. Yes, we have to go back and revisit. No, it's not going away. Yes, we do have to be familiar with them. So, if you're dealing with RAID arrays, you do have some additional challenges with regards to hard drive issues, because you're dealing with multiple drives. So the likelihood of a drive failure actually goes up just because of the sheer numbers of drives being used. If you have a 10% chance of failure and you have only one drive, all well and good. If you have two drives with 10% failure, there's a 20% likelihood that you will receive an issue with one of the two, something along those lines. So, also, you are coupling in the software dealing with these hard drives as well, not just the hard drives themselves, but the software that manages them, even in a hardware RAID array or in a software RAID array. So it may not necessarily be the hard drive, it could be the software driving it. So we need to be able to look at both issues and see what could be done to try to fix this problem. First problem that you might come across is your RAID array isn't found or stops working. Now, try to narrow this down. Is it a single disk that failed on a RAID array? If we had a RAID 0, if a single disk failed, what do we do? RAID 0, single disk failure.
Swap out the disk, or check the disk and swap the bad one out.
What does it do? So are we able to recover our data?
No. Data recovery.
Yeah, no,
RAID 0, no data recovery. So if you don't have backup somewhere, my condolences. Now, if the whole system is down itself, that might point to a problem with the controller or the software itself. So if it is an external RAID hardware device where it has an external controller, it's not software RAID, again, check your connections. Make sure your connections are solid first. Try swapping out the cables, see if that fixes the issue. Sometimes, there's a good chance it will. Most external systems themselves will have an indicator light that indicates that there is a problem with either the utility itself or with an individual drive. So you may have green lights across the board on like 6 drives, and then your 7th drive has a red light on it, letting you know that that drive itself has failed and needs to be changed out. So RAID 0, it's a lot more of a problem because you have not a single point of failure, you have multiple points of failure. So anything fails, the whole thing crashes. It is one of the riskiest RAID arrays you can set up, especially if you're doing 3, 4, 5 disks. You're probably better off doing a RAID 5, so you have that partition or the parity bit in order to be able to reconstruct your data. So that is part of why RAID 0 is not necessarily very popular. RAID 1, you have your increased fault tolerance, decrease in performance because you have to write to both drives themselves. If a single drive fails, you have an exact replica of the data. You can replace the failed drive, resync both of the drives, and you should be good to go unless for some unknown reason you have both drives fail at the same time. That would be exceedingly rare, and that would be where you would lose all of your data. Risk 5, single drive failure, means you just need to replace the drive. You shut down the system, replace the drive, resync the drives, then you can bring it back online, and you should be good to go. The RAID array itself should be able to reconstruct the data from a single failed drive. If 2 drives failed, then at that point, you will lose all your data. Unless you go with a RAID 6 array, which actually has 2 parity bits. But we won't get into that one in this one. They talk about it if you get into Network Plus, things like that. That is another common one used in enterprise settings because it kind of gives you that double backup and it gives you 2 points of failure rather than a single point. All right, RAID 10 or 1+0 or 0+1 is mirrored stripe set. As long as it's only a single drive that fails, you shouldn't lose any data. You should be able to resync, good to go, and you're back up and running. Questions? And whatever RAID system you're working with should have pretty straightforward instructions on how to do this stuff too. All right. Optical drives. CD-ROM, Blu-rays, DVDs. Normally, the problem with these drives is the physical media itself. It's the discs. It's usually in a case. They got a smudge on them. They got scratches on them. Things like that, cracks. I've seen it to where like the older single-sided ones actually had a foil backing. And if that foil backing got scraped, then the laser itself is unable to read the data. So it wasn't even the main lens piece that it would read. It was actually the foil that was reflecting the laser back would cause issues there. So best option here, you have, if it's just smudges, properly clean it. Do not wipe it on your shirt. All that's going to do is scar it up even more. They do have optical disc repair kits, which have a very fine grit sandpaper. You kind of lubricate the disc and you put it in, it'll spin around and it'll essentially buff out that CD and or DVD that can repair it. I've seen ones that look so bad, it looks like somebody drug them down the street. They had huge gouges in them and then run them through these CD repair kits and they work just fine. So, and you can pick one of those repair kits up for $5-10 on Amazon or at a music store or something like that if you wish. And it does wonders. Now, sometimes if it's not optical media, say the drive is not even recognizable, can't even be seen, check your cables. Make sure your cables are plugged in. Make sure they're seated properly. If you're still not able to see it, try swapping out cables, see if that works. Then that should tell you if the data drive is set up. Try hitting the power button and see if it'll actually eject the tray. If it doesn't eject the tray or the lights don't even start blinking, it doesn't have power. Maybe it's a power cable issue. So check your power cables at that point. Also, check the BIOS. Make sure the BIOS recognizes it. If it's a new drive, it may not recognize it. You may need to tell it what kind of drive it is or update your BIOS in order to be able to see it. If there is what's called a master slave jumper on it, you need to check that and make sure that it's set to the proper setting. All right. All right, everything is properly connected and aligned with pin 1. And you should be good at that point. Now, if you have a drive in there and it for the most part works normally, but just some sort of special capability, like writing in dual layer versus single layer, and it's not able to do that, likely points to a software issue. You may need to just update your drives because there might have been a recent update to your operating system and your drivers need to be updated for the optical drive for it to reach its full capability at that point. Questions so far? We are all troubleshooting experts. This is awesome. Right. Video issues. This is usually pretty straightforward, thankfully. There's a limited number of issues that you could probably come across, and they usually fall under 2 pretty simple causes outside of the ID10T errors. There either is a no video or bad video, or the video card or the monitor, projector, or display is to blame itself. So, with any of these, good troubleshooting will likely get you to the proper, answers pretty quickly with regards to this. If it's on a desktop, try plugging in another monitor. If it works on another monitor, but not on the monitor you have plugged in, monitor is bad. Replace the monitor. If it still doesn't work, it's internal. So the monitor itself may be good. If whoever it was previously giving a presentation, they might have toggled the video over to the projector itself, but not toggled it back by the time they came back to their desk, and they just forgot about that. So that's a quick, easy fix. Try toggling the video on and off, see if that works. And likely that could solve the problem. So no image on the screen itself. We just talked about this. You try another monitor. If you try toggling the video on and off and it doesn't work, likely it's going to be pointing towards your video card being an issue. Make sure it's getting power. Like, do you see a light on the monitor letting you know it's plugged in? It is receiving power. Try rebooting the system. Restarts fix a lot of things miraculously, which is why when you call IT, that's the first thing they ask you to do, is restart it. Although some places take it a little bit to an extreme, like Xfinity, they won't even let you talk to somebody unless you have rebooted or restarted your router, which is very frustrating, because you could have an issue that you know where the problem is, and they're wanting to basically restart the router, like pull the king method on your router right off the bat. So reset it to original settings, completely refresh it, and you're good. Now, if you reboot and does the BIOS screen come up? If the BIOS does not come up, it's likely the display unit itself. If it does come up and then the screen goes blank before or during the Windows splash screen, then it is a Windows issue. Then you might need to try to boot to VGA mode or safe mode, which would give you a much lower resolution, and then go out and go to the internet and reinstall the video drivers and see if that helps fix the issue itself. So remember, you can always boot to safe mode, which doesn't have a lot of the bells and whistles. It's very like old school Windows 8-bit, no drivers, no fancy stuff. It is basically just a very low level but functioning version, so that you can troubleshoot and you can slowly start turning things on to see where your problems occur. So if it crashes during boot and you lose display, go to safe mode, boot up, go out, load up or update your drivers. That might solve the issue. If not, it's a bad video card. The video card itself may need to be replaced. All right. Monitor keeps shutting down. So they have their own internal power supplies. They very well can overheat, especially if the vents on the monitors themselves are not kept clean and free of debris. This does happen. It is more common with the old CRT backlights versus the CCFL LCDs rather than LEDs, which don't produce a whole lot of heat. Still happens though. So you just kind of make sure all of that is free and clear. If it keeps going, then there is a bigger issue with the monitor, and the monitor itself probably needs to be replaced at that point. Thankfully, monitors for the most part are field replaceable units. They're relatively inexpensive at this point in time. So if all else fails, try swapping out your displays and you're probably good. I know at my old office, we had a closet that was full of monitors, and we would just go in and grab a different one if we had an issue. All right, dead pixels or artifacts. If you have something like this, this is absolutely monitor related. So dead spots, as we remember, they're pixels that don't necessarily light up. You have lit pixels, which are ones that are always lit. They're white. They're always on no matter what. As long as that monitor is on, they're lit. And then we have stuck pixels, which are stuck on a particular color, but don't change. Artifacts are essentially like burn-in. So if you had the old plasma TVs, you watched football games all day Saturday, and then for the next month, no matter what channel you turn to, you still see the ESPN logo on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So that would be considered an artifact. Sometimes it will lighten up but not fully go away. Other times it's not going away. And so it's either something you deal with or you replace the monitor. I think nowadays when they have that logo, the logo actually kind of moves a little bit. It's not real, perceptible if you're not paying attention to it, but it moves just a little bit. And that even that little bit helps prevent the burn-in. All right. Incorrect colors. Again, monitor issue most likely. You need to go into your settings and see if you can adjust that. If that doesn't fix the issue, try switching monitors, see if that fixes it. Dim or flickering images. If it's LCD, it means it's our CCFL backlight is likely the problem. It is basically beginning to fail. So we can either replace the bulbs or replace the monitors, depending on what your company wants to do at that point. Also, if it's flickering, we know it's not LED because LEDs don't flicker. They're either on or off. All right, distorted images. This was more of an issue with CRT monitors back in the day. And it usually meant you had something magnetic near your monitor, like a speakers or something like that around where your monitor is. Sometimes you would get that green haze in the side of the screen or something like that. But one of the things you could do was you try to remove that external influence, like move the speakers away a little bit further. Some people actually stuck magnets to their monitors to like hold pictures on it, something like that, and didn't realize that actually was affecting the picture. So anything that might be interfering it, try to remove it or minimize it. And then the other thing you can actually do is degauze the monitor itself, which realigns the magnetic field inside the monitor and also can correct for a lot of those image issues as well. Questions? Yes, Ranzi.
What is degauzing?
It's a realignment of the magnetic field. It's basically like another magnet, basically. So we know there is a mild level of interference and it realigns it so that it's sitting properly. Degauzing itself is a magnet, because you'll find when we get to destruction and disposal for 1002, I think we're doing that next week, where that's one way to destroy a hard drive is by what's called degauzing it, which is a powerful magnet that you run over it and it destroys any kind of data on it. This is a little bit different. This is for realigning the magnetic field inside a monitor itself. You would see it sometimes in LEDs, not very much, although I think for the most part that has mostly gone away. But CRTs, it was a real big deal because it was not uncommon for the images to become heavily distorted. For those of us born before the era of flat screen TVs, we do remember this in our TVs. Every now and then you need to go up and you pop to the side of the box to try to realign things in it. All right, any other questions? All right. More video issues. Distorted geometry. The older is, again, this is predominantly a CRT issue itself. They typically had the 4.3 aspect ratio, and newer HD displays, however, these 16:9 or 16:10, basically, if you set your resolution so that it doesn't match the geometry of your screen, people can look really, really thin and tall or really wide and short. So things don't necessarily look right if the geometry on your screen is not properly set. Now, If this is the case, you go into the settings on your computer, set a different resolution. Which resolution is the best we could possibly pick for our monitors? So what's the best resolution we could pick? What do we call it?
Native.
There you go, the native resolution. That is the optimal resolution for the monitor you are using or display device you are using. Yeah, TJ was on it. So other one you may come across, this one falls into the ID10T category, oversized images and icons. Also related to resolution. Also, this means that your resolution is typically set too low. So in trying to create that image, you have really big blown up icons on your computer. Again, go in, update the resolution on your system to hopefully to the native resolution, and this should cause this issue to disappear. And likely when you go in and look at your display settings, it'll tell you which resolution is native. It'll say this is the optimal resolution for your display device, because your display device is also talking to your laptop, telling it what its capabilities are, or your desktop, whatever. All right.
Does
Yes.
this sometimes happen with certain applications or like certain games you put on your laptop or computer or whatever?
Yes, absolutely. So sometimes you'll go to play a game. The game is at a much higher resolution or whatever, or settings, and then the characters or whatever might look big and blotchy. Or if you have if it's a lower resolution, it might have like a really small screen because it's trying to, you know, make things work for you. So in that case, yeah, it's your display settings that will affect that. And sometimes the game itself is trying to change your display settings, which may affect, because it's trying to get it optimal for whatever the game is doing. And that may affect your imagery or icon size or the geometry or something like that. It happens sometimes when you're doing emulators for much older games. You'll see that happen. So other graphics issues might be related to the memory installed on the video card itself. If the memory modules on the video card are the issue, it will have a direct correlation to how well it works. Like if it's supposed to have X many frames per second or resolution, and it's not even getting anywhere close to that, it may actually have a bad onboard memory module, and it can't just replace that with the external RAM in your drives, because that's not going to work as fast. So in that case, it may be, hopefully your video card is still under warranty and you can get it swapped out. Quiz time. Go ahead, stop share. So we will be getting into this more on Thursday when we talk about printers as a whole, but we will, you know, kind of touch on it here. Different types of printers essentially work in different ways. We're going to be talking about a few different types of printers when we get into them. We'll be talking about thermal printers, impact printers, inkjet printers, and laser printers. Those are going to be the four main categories we talk about, and how they function, how to troubleshoot these particular problems. Based on the type of issues you're hearing, we'll also tell you a lot about the printer you're dealing with. So because laser printers are going to have very different issues than an impact printer may have, because they're using different technologies. They show different signs. The three main ones that they talk about here are impact, inkjet, and laser. Thermal printers, a lot of the issues can be resolved by either replacing the heating coil or just cleaning debris out of the thermal printer itself. So they don't really get into that with regards to troubleshooting. Impact printers have a lot of issues. We'll get into the Philbin method of impact printer repair on Thursday when we talk about printers. Now, Impact printers themselves rely predominantly on making physical contact with the paper. They are impacting with the page, transferring the image from a ribbon to the page itself. This is one of the older technologies you will be dealing with. They are still out there in pretty good force, and that is because of a very specific feature they have. They can print multi-part forms. Where you sign, you know, like, you ever been to auto repair place where they print out something, has those little strips on the side, they take it off, have you sign here, then they take a copy, they put a copy in a file and they hand you a copy. That is a multi-part form, and it requires an impact printer in order to generate that type of image. Otherwise, you have to print out 3 copies and then you have to sign 3 pieces of paper. Or you sign it digitally and then they print out 3 copies. Now, one of the first issues you'll come across with regards to impact printers is low print quality. The characters may be too light, dots missing, things like that. If the characters are too light, it's likely the ribbon. And you would need to either advance the ribbon itself or replace the ribbon. If dots are missing, it means that the pistons or the dots may not be firing properly, and you may need to repair or replace that piece of it. Printout jams on the inside of the printer. This is a notorious issue for dot matrix. They were horrible about like slowly getting off track and then just crumpling up the paper on the inside or ripping the tracks off of them. Typically, this is due to either dust or debris inside there. Maybe a little piece of the track got ripped off, fell down in there, and it's causing the paper to get jammed up, crumpled up, what have you. It may be necessary at that point to remove the roller to make sure you get all the debris or any obstructions out of there so that the printer can function properly. Also, over time, especially in the older printers, the gears themselves can get stripped. And if they get stripped, they get out of alignment. They get out of alignment, they're not feeding properly. And if they're not feeding properly, that causes it to kind of crumple up and jam, so to speak. Also, the thickness of the paper is an issue. You have to calibrate the printer to the thickness of the paper you're using. If you're doing multi-part forms, it needs to be calibrated to be able to handle that. If you can't handle that, it's going to cause more jamming. Another issue you may come across is stepper motor damage. If that's damaged, it's kind of easy to spot because the stepper motor is what drives it back and forth across the page. Or advances the paper itself. And if that is not functioning properly, it may cause it to move further with each step. It may not advance properly, so your paper may seem all scrunched. And that is the case, you may need to actually replace the stepper motor, which is not a difficult repair. Questions so far? All right. So here's a good one to take some screenshots. It kind of, did you have a question, Ramsey? Okay. A good one to take a screenshot of or grab real quick because it basically lays out for you really quick. Most common problems with impact printers, what is causing it, how you fix it. So it's a real good one just to grab a screenshot of and work through. Because again, like I said, they love asking about printers on CompTIA. This is also because some of the most common help desk problems you will experience as an IT professional will revolve around printers.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely, Tajma.
Okay, I couldn't get to raise my hand quick enough. But like, I just want to know how to print screen because every time y'all say do it, I try it and it's never actually saved. I have
Okay.
the print screen button and I have, is it like control or is it FM?
Are you on a Windows
Windows.
machine or a Mac?
Windows.
So
You should have a Windows key
It's the Windows key, Shift, and
Yeah.
S.
and print screen. Windows
Well,
key.
mine is Windows key and a sprint and a print screen print button at the same time.
Same for me.
Oh, I thought you was trying to do a screenshot.
Okay, it's working, but
Yeah.
wait. So when I hit Windows and print screen, I see it taking a screenshot.
okay.
But then for some reason, when I do just print screen, it saves it to just OneDrive. But before, when I was trying control print screen, it wasn't working. And I guess on my Mac, I always did command print screen or something like that. And that's what was confusing me. Okay, got it.
On my Mac, it was like I could do a cut, like take a snippet, and it's Command Shift 4, and that allows you to like highlight an area and then take a snip of just what you want to highlight.
Yeah,
with the
that's what
whole
I
screen.
was trying to tell her how to do it. Do that.
I think the Windows and the print screen allows me to take like wet version. Like it allows me to snip.
Yep.
Oh, let me see. Thank y'all.
I'll leave it here for just a moment so we can grab that image. So it gives me a moment to get my chat back up. I lost that. We'll get into some of these in a little more detail when we go through printers. That'll make a little more sense. That technical session we'll be going through either tomorrow or Thursday. I haven't determined which yet. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. All right. Another quiz. Oh man. Gotta love it. After we go buy that lovely printer for $20 on sale, and then we run out of the initial ink cartridge they give us, we go to buy an ink cartridge and it costs us like $80 to replace that ink cartridge. So expensive to redo the ink, not so expensive to get into the actual printer itself. There is a reason for that. Most of the technology with regards to inkjet printers actually resides inside the ink cartridge itself. We'll talk about that a little bit more on Thursday, but understand that outside of the ink cartridge, the technology on an inkjet printer is relatively simple and not too dissimilar from the old school impact printers themselves. So many of the issues you may come across with regards to inkjet printers can be resolved by replacing the ink cartridge. The main pieces you'll be dealing with, you have the print head or ink cartridge itself. You have the print head cartridge, the belt, and the stepper motor. And that moves the carriage back and forth across the page. The paper feed mechanism itself, and then you have the control interface and power circuitry.
Are we supposed to be seeing the slides right now?
Yeah, but sharing is not caring, apparently. Thank you, Mario.
No problem.
I'm guessing probably by about my 10th or 12th cohort, I may stop doing that. don't think I will get to the point where I remember to always unmute myself before I start talking, just because I like talking to myself a little too much. All right, everybody got this. These are the main components you would have issues with regards to the printer itself. All right. Print quality. Majority of your inkjet problems tend to be quality problems. And like I was just saying before, the vast majority of the problems on an inkjet printer can be traced down to a faulty cartridge, either buying so-called refurbished cartridges or refilling cartridges yourself. Yes, there is money to be saved, but there's also the high cost of paying too little. So bear that in mind when dealing with ink cartridges. Now, there may be cases where people are really good at refilling them and the quality is just good enough. But in enterprise settings, when you're printing out marketing material and stuff like that, just good enough likely isn't going to cut it. You want crisp lines, smooth pictures, things like that. And if that's the case, the best recommendation to be given is to use manufacturer, ink cartridges approved by your printer manufacturer.
I always
Yeah.
thought that was just a selling point. You're trying to make sure that you come back for more, buy more of their ink.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is like when you're reusing them, if the person who, like if you're getting a refurbished one, well, maybe the person before you, it took them 2 years to use up that ink cartridge. Well, if that's the case, you might actually have dried ink plugging some of the holes. So the ink won't spray out properly. The viscosity of the ink that they're using might not be the proper thickness that is for the printer that you're using. So it may not come out as readily, or it may come out at too high a rate, causing smudged images. So, I mean, it is a thing. I mean, again, if you're refilling them yourself and you're just using it for home use and stuff like that, it may be good enough and it gets you by. So $15 for an ink refill kit versus spending $60 for a new ink cartridge, that may work for you. In a business setting, it may not be good enough. When you're, if you're printing out rough drafts and just things that you're using for your own personal use, we don't really necessarily care if it's slightly faded, if it's using less ink, maybe it gets a little smudged, it's a little blotchy. That's the thing. That's fine. But in enterprise settings, you're going to want to use the manufacturer's one because it's going to be up to the specifications of the printer you're using. All right. Now, color output problems. Now, some of you fancy people have those multicolor printing printers, like where they can do all these different wonderful colors, stuff like that. Me, I'm still a black and white kind of person. I like grayscale. I just think it's easier on the eyes. So one of the first things you come across if you're using colors is the ink could be bleeding from adjacent areas where the dots are being sprayed out. This can cause the color itself to be off, look slightly odd. Anybody who's done inkjet printing to print photos can kind of see it, or get photos printed nowadays at a like a CVS or something like that, that the color just doesn't quite match where it should be, like old school like Polaroids and stuff like that. It doesn't have that true to life look. So this is like one of the areas that could be a problem. Second problem, possibly is if you've put the ink cartridges in the wrong spot. For the most part, they tend to make them slightly different sizes, but there are some models that will have, you'll have the big chunk for the black ink, and then they'll have the was it yellow, cyan, and magenta will all be the same color, and each of the three individual as they go in. And if you're not paying attention when you put them in, you put them in the wrong places. The computer isn't necessarily going to know that that's the case. Use those colors in a wrong mix, and the colors are going to be off at that case. So open it up, check out. They usually have a nice little color coding layout on the bottom there, tell you which cartridges go in which order. So verify that. Next, if the ink comes out of the cartridge and it doesn't match the label on the cartridge, try the self-cleaning utility. There's a wet sponge or a moist sponge off to the side of the carriage, and it will go over and kind of clean the print heads so that any debris or residual ink from any of the other places could be cleaned off, and it might function properly at that point. If that does not fix the issue, again, we fall back to replacing the cartridges on the machine itself, and that should help mitigate the issues for the most part. Questions so far? Vast majority of the time when you're dealing with inkjet printers, the answer is going to be just replace the cartridges. All right, extra problems with inkjets. Paper jams. Thankfully, for the most part, the printers have pretty simple paper paths. They kind of go in and they move out. Most of the jams you're coming across is likely due to obstructions, pieces of debris, dust. If a page got torn, something like that still in the path itself. And that is where the vast majority of your jams come. The other things that might be the issue is a worn pickup roller. So over time, these rollers that pull one page at a time off of your tray to feed it through, they become worn over time. And so they may grab, instead of one, they may grab two pieces of paper because of the wearing down of the roller itself. The other thing maybe is the calibration of the paper in the printers. You need to tell the printer what kind of paper you're using. Has anybody ever used like the real fancy resume paper? You know what I'm talking about? What's the difference in that? What is it? Like, how does it feel?
It's thicker.
Thicker,
It is thicker. It is
heavier.
heavier, brighter, and good point, Mark. That is what we call it. We call it paper weight, and that will determine the thickness of the paper that you're using. So if you've printed a whole bunch of resumes and your printer has calibrated for that, and then you just go and you slap in your old normal paper, it may grab 3-4 pages and try to pull that all through at the same time, causing a jam. This can also be the case for laser printers. So if you're getting jams or it's picking up more than one page, check your paper settings. Make sure that it's set for the right paper weight. All right. Next, stepper motor problems. Just like in impact printers, the failing stepper motor will have unevenly spaced lines. Sometimes they'll be a little bit too big, sometimes they'll be a little bit too small. So your images may look crushed or stretched based on the stepper motor kind of getting worn. So it's not able to evenly space every time it jumps a line. Questions? All right. On to the fun stuff. Laser printers. Does anybody here have a laser printer? Use one at all? Yeah, all right. Laser printers tend to have the highest upfront cost with regards to printers, but over time are the less expensive option rather than going with a inkjet printer if you do a lot of printing, because the cost of toner is significantly lower than the cost of an ink cartridge itself. Now, there are a multitude of problems you can come across with regards to an inkjet or a laser printer, and we will go over that once we get into printers either tomorrow or Thursday. We will become very familiar with the 7 steps of laser printing, which are right here on your screen. You might want to go ahead and take a snippet of that because we will be talking in detail about these 7 steps. And yes, CompTIA loves to ask about these. Remember how I told you I wrote down my ports, my wireless standards, troubleshooting standards, RAID arrays. The other thing I wrote down was laser printers. 7 steps: processing, charging, exposing, developing, transferring, fusing, and cleaning. You know what you're asking? Do you have some sort of crazy mnemonic that will help us remember these 7 steps in their order? I will say an absolute yes, not only one, but we have 2. So it depends on which one speaks to you more. You can remember that one. We have a PG version and an R version. Most people tend to use the R-rated version. I don't know why. It just sticks in their mind better. All right. Problems. We come up with a laser printer. If it doesn't turn on, obviously there could be an issue with the power it's receiving. Check, make sure that it's plugged in. Check and make sure your cables are secure on both sides. Cables have 2 ends. Verify both of them. Now, you could use a multimeter to find the following voltages on the power interface. In the 20-pin female connector, pin 1 should give you +5, pin 5 should give you -5, pin 9 should give you +24. Now, laser printers have something that's called an HVPS, or high voltage power supply. As technicians, we do not play around with these. So regular power supply, remember how we explained how dangerous they were? With regards to opening them up and, you know, them being a major health risk. High voltage power supplies are even worse. That is something you would call a qualified printer technician in to take care of, and you do not touch it. All right. Next issue we might run into: no connectivity or IP issues. When you have networked a printer, and oftentimes in laser printers, especially the big enterprise ones, they have their own onboard printer server. Now, in this case, the majority of the time, if you're not able to see that or get no connectivity, it is probably an improperly configured IP address in the settings. So go into your settings on your printer, verify the IP address, the gateway, the DNS server, all that stuff is correct. And that should resolve that issue 99% of the time. Next, nothing prints. First question you should ask: are you the only one affected by this? If you try to print the same document from someone else's computer, does it print? If it does, then it's likely the problem is in your computer. If it doesn't, then it may be the problem with the printer. Always check: is it plugged in? Is it powered on? Is it online? Check your connections first whenever it comes to troubleshooting, especially in networking. Yes, Luis.
I was about to say that some people don't realize that sometimes the printer doesn't print because you're not connected to the same Wi-Fi. Some people think if you're connected to your like to your LTE, you're gonna be able to print with your printer. It
Yeah,
doesn't work like
if you're
that.
not on your Wi-Fi at your house, you're on your cellular signal, and you try to print to your printer, it won't see it because it's not on the same network. That's an excellent point, Luis. So checking your connections, making sure your computer's on the right network, making sure the printer's on the right network. New fancy printers have WPS. Should we use this?
Of course, it's the latest and greatest. Safe and secure.
Should be a big red flag right there.
I mean, I would have used it until I figured out I shouldn't use it. You disable that, Kelly.
Yes,
that's what we do.
That is the correct answer. Disable WPS because it is a fully cracked protocol and allows a essentially a gateway into your network. Not as good as, say, a thermometer in a fish tank at a casino.
Nice.
Because who would have thought to check that to get into the casino?
No one.
Apparently someone did.
I guarantee it was the people that, if you dig deep enough, I'm sure it's the company that gave the casino.
Yeah.
It's somewhere they're connected. Somewhere. I'm starting to lose that naiveness there. Somewhere they're
So you're
connected.
saying they got Ocean's 11?
Easily. Did we find out how much they secured? Did that? I think let me pull up that story.
Yeah, see if you can figure out how much they got away with.
All right.
All right, blank pages. First place we check, toner. That's the first place you look. Make sure the toner has actual toner inside it. That would be a good one. The other one is the transfer corona assembly. If it's damaged or missing, it won't be able to create the proper charge, allowing the page to just kind of pass through with nothing on it. High voltage power supply gone bad because the laser printer has two different power supplies. It has a normal power supply so it can turn on, and then it has the high voltage power supply to charge the coronas and the heating elements or the fusers. So if that is not functioning, nothing gets attached to the page, nothing gets fused to the page, so it passes through with nothing on it. All black pages. This happens when the toner cartridge essentially malfunctions, fails to place the proper charge on the photosensitive drum. And because the drum is grounded, it has no charge. Anything with a charge like toner, which has a charge to it, will stick to it. And as the drum rotates, all the toner is transferred to the page itself, and then the fuser melts it all into the page. So solution, try replacing the toner cartridge, see if that fixes it. If that does not do it, the high voltage power supply is likely at fault. Repetitive small marks or defects. We'll get into this one a little bit better on Thursday. This could be caused by spilled toner inside the printer itself, and it could be stuck to a roller. It also could be a damaged or defective toner cartridge. All right, vertical black lines on the page. Damaged photosensitive drum is likely it, or a dirty corona wire of dust or debris is on there. It's blocking it from fully charging evenly across the board. The drum is typically part of the toner cartridge itself. So you replace the cartridge, the drum gets replaced with it. And if ever you open it up, you never, ever, ever, ever touch the photosensitive drum, because that will permanently damage it. Image smudging. This is typically the fuser isn't reaching the temperature it needs to permanently affix the toner to the paper, or it could be your paper settings. So if you run a bunch of normal office paper through a printer, and then you start running that thick weight resume paper through there, that fuser is going to need to go to a higher temperature in order to get the page hot enough to fuse the image in. If that's not the case, then it will cause smudging. Ghosting. Similar to ghosting on monitors, when you have that residual or faint images from previous printed pages. This can be caused by a broken cleaning blade, so it's not evenly touching the drum itself to scrape off all the residual toner, or the erasure lamp that wipes the image clean off of the photosensitive drum itself is not functioning properly or getting bright enough in order to negate the image. And then this one is true for nearly all printers. If you're getting garbled text or essentially garbage, random symbols being printed out, there usually is only one culprit. The printer driver is not corrected on the printer. Questions so far? All right. Questions with regards to laser printers? All right. We're not all experts. So networks are used essentially to connect us to other resources. So when they don't operate the way we want them to, people tend to get frustrated. So here's some common issues you have. First one being no connectivity at all. It's the most common issue that people pick up on is that they're not able to talk to the internet at all. Now, if it's a wired connection, always, first thing we check your cables. And remember, cables have two sides. So you check it at the computer, check it at the wall. Make sure it is securely in place. There's the cleaning crew issue. If they're vacuuming in the area or something like that, they may bump the back of the computer. They may brush against the wall. If this happens repeatedly, it can either damage the cable, bump the cable out of place, something along those lines. So either check the cables, make sure the connections are good, or swap out cables and see if that fixes it. Unfortunately, these cables are typically exposed under the desk. So when people are sitting in the desks, they're kicking them, stepping on them, hopefully not rolling over them with their chairs, things of that nature. And hopefully you're not in an office where they actually have exposed cables running along the floor, because not only is it a tripping hazard for you, if you're walking across the floor, it's also a quick and easy way to destroy the cables that are running along the floor themselves. They need to have a channel to run through where they are protected. Also, tightly cinching cables, if you're trying to get them up and out of the way with cable management, can also damage the cables themselves. You must allow for a little bit of slack so that the equipment can move around a little bit and avoid altering the electrical characteristics of the cable. Like many network cables, they have tiny little threads of copper that run through them that are kind of braided together. And if you bend them too much or roll over them or whatever, you can eventually break down these threads to where the cable will not function as good. So now with regards to connectivity issues outside of the cable itself, you've checked them both. The card's on, the lights are on the card on the back of the machine where it's plugged in. So that seems to be working. Try shutting it down, unplugging the patch and power cable for a few moments, press and hold the power button to discharge any residual charge, then plugging it back in, reboot, and that may fix the unresponsive network interface card as well.
All right, I'm up now, Kelly. I can do this next one.
Copy that.
All right, network issues. And this is fun for me because this is a reason why you would come visit me at my big box electronic retail store. So no connectivity can mean a lot of things, but one thing that you're checking for and typically is a good sign if you on the end of that cable, on the end of that connector, that the light will be green or there will be some type of blinking if there's a connection or some type of feedback. If there is no light, then there's a great possibility that we're having issues with that cable, like Kelly just mentioned. Could it be plugged up on both ends? Because the cables have two ends to them. Could it have been damaged due to things that Kelly mentioned just a minute ago? Or, I mean, things just go bad. Like it's okay. Things go bad. You don't expect it to go bad too quick, and you don't really expect cables to do that if they're being maintained well or not being used. Another big aesthetic thing, but also it's a performance maintenance thing, is cable management. So a lot of places will, if you see a well-maintained server room or anything like that, you'll see how the cables are all labeled and maintained, and the drop to the back of your computer and come up out of a hole out of the desk. They want to make sure that you don't interfere with the cables, because you don't want to be the cause of the cable going bad any sooner. So we check the physical portion of trying to address any cable issues. So let's now go to software portion. So most wireless cards also have that light. We talked about the little green blinking light, but if you are having issues, it's time to go into the CLI or the command line interface or command prompt terminal, wherever you want to go to check this, depending on your device. And when you open that command line, you're going to type in IP config. At this point, we've all, can y'all hear that one more? Okay. Small.
Barely.
Okay. Okay. Command line. We all should have done this at some point. I need some emojis. I need some activity here. Everybody has went into their command prompt and typed in IP config and saw what came up. Correct? Ponder, you've done that yet? Miss John, you've done that yet? I thank you, Jordan. I know Pozo. I know Mark for sure. Alan, TJ, cool. Evan, have you done that yet? Got to do that, sir, if you haven't. All right, Diaz. I think we talked about it. Renzi, you done that yet? You got to pull it up. It's not, you're not going to do any hurt. You're not going to hurt anything. IP config will give you some information. It'll give you, as it says on the screen here, it gives you your address, default gateway. It'll give you subnet mask, and also some temporary addresses via IPv6. And this is just letting you know, nice, it was done in the lab. So we all should have done it in the lab at this point. So, and it also gives you your gateway, which is that Comcast.net. So that lets you know where you're coming from. If some of this is not being shown here, then you will also know what type of issue is here. I like to get a little more interactive. I know we're kind of tight on time, but Evan, you know it. Come on now. I want you to read the subnet mask. Follow that line over and tell me what that subnet mask is. It's in the little picture. It's the second one from the bottom. What's those numbers?
255.250.
No. This is Evan. This is all Evan all the time. Evan, can you hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I didn't hear you say Evan. My
I
bad.
know you did. It's
Like
fine.
you asking like the numbers or like
Yeah,
the meaning?
the numbers. Give me the numbers.
Oh, 255.255.255.0.
Does that mean anything to you right now? Since this past week? What are all those 255s? What are they doing? They're taking up some spaces. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? What is that slash? What is that slash notation? If I had to get you to write that differently, how would you write that? I'm gonna let you think about that. That's the first question. Nobody help him right now. Let's see what Evan got for me. Also, what class is this? Those are two
IT.
questions. You said again.
IT support specialist. Yeah.
I love you, Evan. I love you, Evan. I love you. Okay, so I'm gonna get somebody in here I'm gonna get some people to help you out. Not Mark, because I know you got it. Diaz, since you was all up in the videos like Diddy, all up in the video. Come on. So no, Jordan. What slash notation it is first? Diaz.
Take a guess at 24.
So
That's
okay,
right.
that's correct. So what class is it in?
I would say C.
There you go. It took up 3 of the 4 octets, so that's slash 624 class C. That's exactly what it is, and that's how when you pull up this stuff now, it's starting to make sense. Like you would have known that 2 weeks ago, you know. So that's kind of cool. I just wanted to bring that out. You caught that, Evan? So if it was only if it was 255.0.0.0, that's class A, and it's slash what, Evan? Because it's all 8s. Slash what? Bring us on.
Slash 20.
Oh, just no, it's 24 with C. I went from
slash 18. Wait,
slash
no.
8.
Slash 8.
Because 8 plus 8, that's 16 plus 8 is 24. You're doing each octet, because Kelly will let me say that with this one. It's 8. So we're gonna continue with that as well. So continuing on with there's no connectivity. What you would typically hear is that I can't get to anything. That's very common to hear as a technician in the industry and enterprise setting, and you need to figure out what that means. So there's a lot of things that you can't get to. Can you get to the internet? Or can you get to the shared, like, are you not able to print? Can you get to the shared printer? So this is like, you need to ask the appropriate questions, because we realize that something can happen where you can't get to the internet, but you can still work on the network. What is that called? What do you receive if that happens? That's a very broad, open question, but I still want you to think about how I said it and give me an answer that's appropriate. Alan, since you're not jumping to answer this one, I want you to answer this, because I know you know it. If you can still use the network but cannot get on the internet, what does your computer have?
Internet over power?
Nope. So I'm going to mute you. Renzi, you're just next. You're just next to him. You can't get to the set. Go. Oh, you got it? Go for it. What you about to say?
No, I wanted you to repeat the question.
Okay. You can't get to the internet, but you can still utilize things on the network. What does your computer have?
What does it have? As in,
Yep. Okay, maybe this would have helped Alan out a little bit. The DHCP server is down.
Okay.
Does that help you, Alan, at all? Does that drive home the point? Shake your head, yes or no? Okay.
Okay. So
So
then. Okay.
your computer has been issued a what?
A
Which
PIP.
will allow you, there we go, a PIPA. PIPA, Alan. Automatic IP private address, because you can't get on the internet with that, but you can still move about the network. But those type of things you would need to know how to look into the IP config like we just did and see if you see, oh, I'm finna hurt somebody now. What's the PIPA address? Mark, nope. Nope, not you, Alan.
I gotta
Mark.
redeem myself.
Go for it. Don't do it, Mark. Go for it, Alan. What you got?
169.254.
My guy. All right, we're done with it. So is this, you got to know what to ask the front end user, because there's so many different ways that you can impact network issues. We don't know, is the network is stopping you from doing work as far as getting to a shared drive, getting to the printer that's connected on your floor, or is it stopping you from getting on the internet? So you got to have the appropriate questions. That's why those questions are very important in how you ask. So one thing that we have in our disposal is the ability to ping. When I say ping, Mark, what comes to mind when I mention ping? What am I trying to do?
You're trying to check for connectivity. Trying to check for connectivity between your network and maybe someplace outside. You can ping a local host as well.
And that's what I wanted you to send. Okay, so you have the ability to ping another area or your device. So, and it's all about connectivity. This is what we have in our back pocket to ensure that we do have a proper connection and it's live and it's active. So you have the ability to ping. And if you notice here, at the end of that, we have TTL, which is time to live, which is the time that it's taking for this particular address to send and receive that information. And at the bottom, we have 4 packets sent, 4 packets received, 0 lost. So we know that address is live and is not having any issues. So this is something that you also have to ensure that you have connectivity, because you can have connectivity and things just not be set up. You want to know what's going on. You got to work through some of your options here. Avery, this looks like fun. What did we learn today on the Kahoot? Was it today or yesterday? What's TLD? Yeah, TLD. Anybody remember that? So no, Riz, if you remember it, yeah. I need a face that don't read. I need a face that don't remember. Pozo, you remember? Don't say it if you do. Don't say it if you do. Okay. Evan, my guy.
Top level domain.
Evan, go for it, Evan.
Top level domain.
And if I give you a web address, if I say www.yahoo.com, what part of that is my TLD? Bring us home, Evan. Eggs, toast, coffee, then water.
The website name itself? No. Wait, no. Would that be like the ending of the website, like the .net?
And I got my chat up. I'm gonna start cutting my chat off. It's .com, .org, .edu, .gov. It's the last part of that web address that's given. Appreciate you, Evan. Always a fun sport. Okay, these are some things that we can use when we go into our IP config. And I'm gonna just talk about what they mean. So you type in IP config /all, it's gonna give you all of your configuration information. Like I told you, there are instances where in my past, I couldn't or didn't know this and would do things to address it, but I could easily force a device to release the IP that's attached to the device or from the DHCP server and renew to request a new IP address, and it will issue and obtain a new address, and that could possibly address some of my connectivity issues depending on what they are. It's not like this a lot, but if we had 10 computers in an office, and Kelly mentioned earlier today, I went away for the weekend and I took my computer with me, and somebody else in the office purchased a new computer. And so now we have 9 with that newer computer is 10. I have my computer at home, but they still have both of their computers on the network, the one that they're not using. I get there and I can't get on the internet, or I can't get on the network because all of the IPs are up. Because I still have my old IP address and still looking for it, which has been given to that new PC. I'm running into issues. So I need to know what I need to do. We need to renew, because that old computer that they got is off the network. It's not using it. It's just holding it. And we need to let the DHCP server know, hey, this is it. We're not using that one anymore. I'm going to give you a new one, especially if it's not static. These are for dynamic via the DHCP server. So this is how you can obtain it. You can also flush too, to flush the DNS. Trace cert. So trace cert will allow you to, as it says, verify a route to the remote host. And so you'll type in, it says trace cert space Google, and this is the route to Google. It's showing the places that it's jumping to, where it's coming from, until it gets to that location. If you notice, at the bottom it says MIA 09S17, so it had to go somewhere to Miami. It jumped off whatever node in Miami to get to that location. So I think that's kind of neat. Then this is something that you can do in your spare time that can that's kind of cool.
Don't we have a way we can practice this?
I was waiting on Avery to say it.
There's a great test out lab on this.
Oh man, I was hoping there was.
Way to go. So some more command line things. You have NetStat, a way to check out the inbound and outbound connections, TCP IP connections. So you can actually see some of those movements through different addresses, and if there are any errors, and if you're receiving a lot of them, that can give us more information on how to address an issue that we may be trying to work through. NetStat is used a lot, actually. And this is NetStat command. It allows us to show more. Oh, this is NebStat, not NetStat, NebStat. So this is showing the net BIOS over the TCP IP. While not often used, it can be useful when trying to diagnose a net BIOS problem with the name. Will you see this a lot? More so, NetStat is the one that we'll see or use. Some more commands, because like I said, this is command line, so there's a lot of commands, a lot of things you can do with the command line. And as you see, having a sheet like this, like a little check sheet, a little cheat sheet, you'd see where you got view, user, time, and you're able to see all of those things. Command line is so the purpose of the command line is to take the computer almost down to bare bones to work behind the GUI, because sometimes the GUI can be your issue and stopping you from seeing things. So this makes you feel like a super techie person. I don't know if that's just how I feel when I'm in the command line. It's like, oh man, I'm really in this. So you don't have any help from that interface that you normally would use, because a lot of this can be done on the front end too. NS lookup.
I like to go to Starbucks and get my coffee and just pull up command line and just start typing in like ipconfig/all, so people think I'm doing tech stuff, but really just drinking coffee.
just drinking coffee, man, and looking the part. That's so funny. If Avery really does that, that's like super funny. So Avery told us a story about his dad and all these Starbucks points that he get. So and he doesn't even drink Starbucks. So that made me laugh within itself. But the flavor of the month or the fall is always going to be pumpkin something. So Avery, do you drink pumpkin spice coffee?
Pumpkin spice.
Yeah, I drink pumpkin spice coffee.
Of course you do, right? Of course. Like,
Yeah.
why would I ask you that? Yeah.
It's the seasonal flavor.
It's very, very, and that's a trendy, like it's trendy. So my wife, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not. So let's keep going. We got NS lookup. Command that is able to verify entries on the DNS server. Another test.lab, I'm pretty sure. So a couple of those are big. NS lookup is big. All the config stuff I can see being asked in this level. Also netstat. Those are the ones that I would take home from the command line for sure. Any questions? Don't even know if you have a question to ask.
I have a question, Marvin.
Okay.
Do we release or renew first?
Well, think about it. Well, is this question for me, Avery?
You can pass it
No,
along if you want.
It's for Evan. It's for Evan. Evan.
The question was again?
I'm going to tell you, Avery wants to know when he goes to IP config, because he's having issues with his with networking and his IP address, and he's looking to address it. No pun intended. Does he have the ability to in what order does he do it? Does he renew or does he release his IP address in order to resolve his issue? Renew or release? In what order would you do this?
Would you release first? Because it's kind of a common sense thing.
Hey man,
to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's real common sense.
No,
so
Avery,
kind of
well,
so you
know
release to renew it. I feel like there's something more behind it though.
Since there were no questions at this point, we should be able to resolve hardware and networking issues through a plethora of resolution points, be it either the command line. If it's hardware related, we saw some steps that Kelly gave us and a mnemonic that can be said in different ways that will allow us to know how to address any laser printer issues.
We haven't given her the mnemonic yet. We're safe.
Oh, I thought I saw it up there. Okay.
No. We had the steps up there, but we haven't given the mnemonic yet. We're safe.
Okay. So at this point, you should feel empowered. You should feel invigorated and also hungry because it's time to go to lunch. Yes.